Coming up, can you do a 0-0 approach with just synthetic vision?
A setback for the Cirrus Vision jet, and learning to fly in formation.
And a visit to the other Air and Space Museum. AOPA Live this week starts in just a moment.
Purchasing your own aircraft is an exciting experience. AOPA Finance simplifies the process, saving you money with lower interest rates and hassle-free loans, so you get into your new aircraft sooner. AOPA Finance, the right approach to buying an aircraft.
This is AOPA Live This Week with Tom Haynes and Melissa Rudinger.
It's happened again. Another jet is grounded with problems with the angle of attack sensing system.
On April 18th, the FAA issued an emergency airworthiness directive grounding all Cirrus SF-50 Vision jets until a faulty angle of attack sensor is replaced. Now, Cirrus itself reported the 3 incidents to the FAA, and earlier in the week, the company issued a service bulletin. In one case, the faulty angle of attack sensor caused the aircraft to pitch down. Now, the pilot followed book procedures to recover. The problem is a manufacturing defect in the Aerosonic AOA sensor. Aerosonic is shipping new sensors now, and Cirrus is working to get all SF-50s back in service as quickly as possible. So, Tom, I know you've flown the SF-50, so how does that sensor tie into all the systems on the jet?
Right, yeah. Well, the angle of attack system is driven by a vane on the side of the fuselage that moves and provides information to the system that is tied into the flight management system and also to the flight control system. And in the case of the Cirrus, that's all part of the G3000 cockpit that we know so well. And it provides input on the attitude of the airplane. And in the case of the Cirrus, it will provide guidance to the flight control system, and particularly the ESP, the Electronic Stability and Protection System, that will kick in even if the autopilot isn't on. It will pitch the airplane up if you're in a descent and near an overspeed situation, or pitch the airplane over, or soften the roll, provide guidance back on the roll. And it's all designed to keep the airplane safe and inside its envelope protection. In the case of a stall, it can help prevent a stall. It can help activate the stick shaker in the Cirrus jet. And so as we found out, in this case, this was a sensor problem from the manufacturer, and Cirrus reacted pretty quickly to get that fixed.
So at first blush, it looks kind of like the same situation with the Boeing 737 MAX, but I know for one thing, the angle of attack sensors are made by different companies, and there's some other differences too, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Boeing situation appears to be a software problem, and to a certain extent maybe a training problem. In the case of Cirrus, it's a hardware problem in that they actually had a sensor problem that they discovered and quickly took action to fix that. And they also communicated very well, and the pilots who experienced the couple of situations where it actually kicked in inappropriately, they actually followed standard procedure that they're trained for, quickly disconnected the autopilot and override the stability protection system, and everything was fine, and they landed, and it all worked as it was supposed to.
Yeah, Cirrus really is to be commended for jumping right on top of this immediately.
Right, it's a much simpler system to disconnect. It's very normal sort of training, where apparently in the Boeing system, you also have to reach over and turn off these switches that are on the center console, and that caused some confusion. And so, again, it seems like somewhat of a training problem as well as a software problem on the Boeing side.
Yeah.
Well, hey, it's a remarkable story. Last week, 3 people walked away from a Cessna 172 after it crashed near JFK Airport in New York. Local media reports say that the pilot attempted 6 instrument approaches in dense fog before the airplane ran out of fuel. After clipping a roof, the 172 ended up suspended by power lines just a few feet above the ground. Visibility at the time was just 1/8 of a mile. Now, incidents like this make you wonder, would synthetic vision in the cockpit help in a situation like this? Could you land just by looking at the screen without any outside references? Well, AOPA pilot editor-at-large Dave Hirschman did a test to find out.
Any lawyer would call this a terrible idea. No avionics firm would encourage it either. But pilots who fly with GPS-derived synthetic vision can't help but wonder, If you faced an aerial emergency in which you absolutely had to land without the ability to see beyond the instrument panel, could you do it using synthetic vision alone? To find out, I papered over the canopy of this TB-30 Epsilon. When owner Mike Felucci strapped in and closed the lid, his world got really small. A 10-inch Garmin G3X was his only means of aviating and navigating. I taxied from the back seat, lined up with the runway, and handed the controls over to Mike for a simulated 0-0 takeoff.
Hey, I have the airplane and everything's go. Here we go.
We flew to Martinsburg, West Virginia, where a massive 8,800-foot runway gave us a huge target. Mike used synthetic vision to line up with runway 26 and descended to about 50 feet above the ground. When he started to round out, however, things got dicey.
Like this one to go around. Okay, we're on the go.
We flew back out for another try, and this time Mike tuned the ILS and flew through the green highway in the sky boxes that provided vertical guidance. This time, the transition went better. He flew all the way to the runway surface and touched down long and left of center. It wasn't pretty, but he managed to keep the airplane on the 150-foot wide runway. A third and final effort had almost exactly the same result. It was time to release Mike from his cave and let him land normally. The takeaway from all this? Synthetic vision is a wonderful safety tool that vastly expands pilot situational awareness, but it's no substitute for actually being able to see the runway. As good as synthetic vision is, it's not enough to rely on for landings. Not yet, anyway. Dave Hirschman, AOPA Live.
So the lawyers say, don't try this at home.
Yes, do not do this at home. And we spared no expense to paper over that
Yes,
canopy.
absolutely. Yes, that was all good stuff. Old posters.
Have you ever done a 0-0 landing?
I have not.
Actually, back in the Jurassic Age when I was learning
Right.
instrument flying, I did do a couple 0-0 without the benefit of synthetic vision. It's possible, but boy, you sure wouldn't want to do it unless you had no other choice.
Yeah, really. But there are situations like maybe that 172 in New York, if he'd have just said, I'm just going for it and set up the right attitude and that sort of thing, and a nice
set up
gentle...
the right attitude, nice gentle descent, and just wait
and
for it
at
to touch
JFK, you'd
down.
have very long runways, so maybe it would have worked out. But hey, as it ended, hanging from the wires, they survived and everybody was okay. But phew, what a test.
Well, so synthetic vision could save your life, and here's something else that could: ADSB. A recent study shows a significant reduction in the chance of an accident when an aircraft is equipped with ADSB. The study looked at 5 years of data.
And so this follow-on study was exciting because it not only validated the original assumptions and statistics, benefits, but it also showed actually an increase of those benefits, specifically when it comes to safety.
A huge improvement in safety. A 53% reduction in weather-related accidents, such as controlled flight into terrain and mid-air collisions for aircraft equipped with ADSB, and an almost 90% reduction in fatal accidents. Now that makes the business case for FAA to expand the system and install more ground stations, particularly in Alaska.
So AOPA has been working with the FAA for quite a while to leverage the information we get from our members in rural locations like Alaska and Pacific Northwest to show where aircraft are flying that might be outside of radar coverage. So the FAA doesn't really know the benefit, the number of aircraft affected if we were to expand ADSB in those areas, right, to increase ADSB in coverage as well as air traffic surveillance coverage. So we continue to work with the FAA, and I think this new study furthers that argument and benefits case.
And speaking of safety, data link weather in the cockpit is a great aid. And if you have an older satellite weather receiver on your airplane, you could save $300 if you upgrade to a newer model, but you have until just the end of April to act. SiriusXM has a trade-in deal. Trade in a working receiver for a new Garmin GDL 51 or 52 receiver, and Sirius will give you a $100 credit and a $200 rebate. Now, both Garmins work with tablet apps like the Garmin Pilot and ForeFlight. Go to Aircraft Spruce's website and search SiriusXM Trade-In to get the details.
And speaking of Garmin, they're going supersonic. The company is celebrating the maiden flight of a G3000 integrated flight deck in an F-5 fighter. Talk about old meets new. The Navy uses the F-5 as an aggressor aircraft for training fighter pilots, and using COTS, commercial off-the-shelf technology like the G3000, it speeds up development time and is cheaper for the taxpayer, and it makes the F-5 even more capable. Ever wanted to learn to fly formation? Well, there will be an opportunity to learn at AOPA's fly-in to Frederick, Maryland on May 10th and 11th.
The clinics are taught by Mike Felucci, the former FAST team president. FAST stands for Formation and Safety Team, and Mike Ginter, the former North American Trainer Association president, and myself, Richard McSpadden, former commander flight leader of the Air Force Thunderbirds and executive director of the Air Safety Institute. So come out and improve your flying skills, learn a little bit about formation, have an awful lot of fun. We'll hope to see you there.
That's some teaching staff. The formation workshop will be just one of many offered at the fly-in. You can learn about upset recovery, backcountry flying, and a whole lot more. And on top of learning new skills, the sessions count as loggable ground school. To come to any of the workshops, you can buy a workshop pass for just $99 if you buy it in advance.
And it takes a lot of people power to put on our fly-in events. So we are looking for more volunteers to help at the Frederick fly-in. Now, volunteering is a great way to connect with AOPA staff and fellow pilots. You also get a free t-shirt and a hat as part of the deal. You can sign up to volunteer on the AOPA fly-in website. And you know, Tom, I've talked to a lot of volunteers through the years at our fly-ins, and every one of them tell me they have a really great time and they meet really interesting people, so it's really worth doing.
It is. It's kind of a peek behind the curtain about what it takes to put one of these things on, and we really need the volunteers. We couldn't do it without the help, so thanks to anybody who can out help us.
Absolutely.
When we come back, the FAA certificates the U.S.'s smallest air carrier.
And a visit to a national treasure that's not on the Washington Mall.
There are many important things to consider before purchasing an aircraft. Let the experts at Aerospace Reports help guide you through the process. We combine expert knowledge with our long-standing commitment to personalized customer service to perfect your transaction. Learn more at aerospacereports.com.
Welcome back. There's a new certificated air carrier in the U.S., and it flies drones. The FAA has just certificated Wing to deliver packages by drone, a first in the U.S. Wing is part of the Google Alphabet world domination conglomerate that we all rely on every day, and they're going to be testing the package delivery system in 2 Virginia communities. The FAA looked at data from Wing's tests and deliveries in Australia. Wing launched commercial drone-to-home delivery service in select neighborhoods in Canberra, Australia, earlier this month, and said it will begin a similar service in Finland in December.
We note the passing of a groundbreaking female aviator. Geraldine Jerry Cobb died in Florida at age 88. She was in the group of skilled female pilots known as First Lady Astronaut Trainees, or FLAT. She went through the rigorous astronaut selection process for the Mercury program, but ultimately the women weren't allowed to fly into space. It just wasn't the right time. She turned her considerable flying skills to humanitarian and missionary work. You can read much more about the remarkable Jerry Cobb on our website.
It's the most complained about airport in our FBO surveys. Heber Valley Airport, serving the swanky Deer Valley and Park City resorts in Utah. And we thought we were making progress and getting some competition there on the field to challenge the monopoly wielded by OK3, the FBO. But the City Council earlier this month passed 2 resolutions that effectively blocked a second FBO and the possibility of self-fueling. But the city manager told AOPA that the city was still concerned about fuel prices and urged patience while it resolved some perceived issues with the FAA. AOPA General Counsel Ken Mead accuses the city of pulling back because OK3 has sued the city to maintain its monopoly position, and the city is trying to mitigate the damages. Mead has indicated that AOPA wants to work with the city to expedite competition there. If you're coming to the area for the Frederick fly-in, there's an abundance of things to do in the region.
Well, there sure are, Tom, and one of the gems is the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum Udvar-Hazy Center next to Dulles Airport. AOPA Live's Josh Cochran gives us a glimpse of what you can see if you visit.
You can't help but have a sense of awe when you walk through the doors of the Udvar-Hazy Center.
You look down on the SR-71, Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, and then behind it, the Space Shuttle Discovery. So it's a real iconic viewing station there.
And the SR-71 and Space Shuttle are just the beginning.
And we collect everything from private all the way up to the really important military. And some planes may not have their own really big history, but they're an iconic type of a design, like the King Air that we have. And it just shows the value of a great design and how it's still the most popular turboprop aircraft of today.
One of the airplanes that you may recognize is R.A. Bob Hoover's legendary Shrike Commander. Bob delivered the airplane to the museum in typical Bob Hoover fashion.
When he arrived here, he asked the tower if he could do just a short flyby of the Dulles Airport and our specific tower here, the Engen Tower. And he did just a smooth, beautiful flight, and he taxied up to the north door of the hangar. And Bob just decided, you know, I'm going to deliver this airplane and I will deliver it in style. And he taxied it right into the north end of the building. And then turned everything off, stepped out and said, here's your plane. It was just, you know, one of those moments that you really enjoy working at the museum, when you are able to deal with someone like that with such extraordinary personality and skill.
Visitors to the museum can get a glimpse of the process of restoring the airplanes for display. This B-26 is one of the major restoration projects going on now.
Something that's definitely got a huge history to it is in back of me is Flak Bait, the Martin Marauder, that is in various pieces, as you can see back there. And this is a very storied aircraft from World War II that flew more bombing missions than any other aircraft, 207. And it's called flak bait because it attracted a lot of flak. Somehow it lumbered back through all of these missions, made it time after time, and so has a real reputation as one of the really star aircraft. And so on the exterior, though, you know, we've done cleaning, done very, very carefully. We don't want to lose those flak holes. That is obviously a huge part of the history of this aircraft.
The Udvar-Hazy Center gives visitors a chance to look back at the history of aviation while also introducing future aviators to the world of flight. And with all the incredible experiences here, it's worth a trip. Josh Cochran, AOPA Live.
Now, the official AOPA excursion to Udvar-Hazy is sold out, but you're welcome to visit on your own. And you know, Tom, speaking of selling out, tickets to some of our other flying events are going pretty fast too, so you really need to get in. I mean, there's going to be some fun stuff like the cookout on the flight line, the stole competition. Right.
Yeah, particularly the flight line cookout. We need you to get tickets because we got to buy the food in advance. We need to know how many are coming, so you definitely need ticket for that. But it's going to be a great show, and Udvar-Hazy is a wonderful facility. Oh yeah. So if you're flying in for the fly-in, you know, plan on spending another day and getting over to Dulles. Absolutely. Well, and that's it for this week. We're so glad you could give us a bit of your time. And remember, we love hearing from you. Our email address is aopalive@aopa.org. Let us know what you think. Until next Thursday, fly safe.